Good morning. 3 minutes after 10. Big show today. I thought parking tickets, potholes, motorway lanes, you name it. We're going to be covering all the biggies. It's a mad one, isn't it? I mean, it is not Brenda from Bristol territory. I think we can safely say that. It's been 4.5 years, or it will have been come July, since we've had a general election. The last one felt like it was almost an annual affair, didn't it? How many prime ministers, how many Conservative leaders have we had since the last one? We're on our third at the moment, who have all been unprecedentedly awful. Hearing Rishi Sunak this morning attempting to campaign on his record was a moment of almost perfect comedy. You sort of say to yourself, well, which record is that, champ? Which record is that you're campaigning on? I remember when inflation went through the roof. Do you remember that? And he was absolutely adamant it had nothing to do with the government, and it was everything to do with international factors, most obviously energy price rises caused by the war in Ukraine. And then those situations resolve themselves and inflation comes down. He's claiming all the credit for it. And I've got to say, I was amazed this morning that interviewers let him. He said, all of the tough decisions that I've made have put the economy back on an even keel. And nobody said, which decisions are those, champ? Which decisions are those? And now that we have brought inflation down, how did you do that? And if you had the levers and the powers to bring inflation down, would that not mean that you were responsible for when inflation went up? I mean, it is one of those mornings where your sort of relief stroke interest in the looming election is leavened quite seriously by the reminder of just how broken the country is. The fact that the media has been reduced to letting Rishi Sunak make ludicrous claims about everything from the economy and inflation to how other European countries are viewing his Rwanda plan. So his latest wheeze is to claim that 15 other European countries support his Rwanda plan. So he's boasting about other countries supporting his Rwanda plan while admitting to Nick Ferrari this morning that the Rwanda plan is not going to have come to fruition before they actually go to the polls in July. If you look at what these European countries have actually said, you could just about make a case for Austria on a recent visit doing one tiny bit of it. And that would be that if you go to a third... Well, no, you can't even do that because Austria certainly hasn't said we're going to change the law in order to render an unsafe country safe. So he's claiming that 15 European countries are backing him on the Rwanda plan that he has admitted this morning is not going to have come to fruition before they actually go to the country in July. But he's lying, and he must know that he's lying, because no European country would be able legally to change a law to alter the meaning of the word unsafe to mean safe. And then if you process asylum applications offshore and those applications are successful, the plans being discussed at the European Union would involve those applicants coming back to the country or coming to the country in which they had arrived before being sent to a safe third country, which couldn't be Rwanda. That the only bit that maybe works would be the bit about if the application is unsuccessful, they have to stay there. But, to my shame, I don't know the detail of that on the Rwanda plan. What happens to the unsuccessful applicants for asylum? Do they all stay in Rwanda as well? And do they stay there with exactly the same rights as the successful applicants, and therefore presumably exactly the same costs to the British Exchequer? So it's everything that he says that's nonsense, not just bits of it. It's not like traditional politics. This is the post-Brexit, post-Boris Johnson election, where the Conservatives are going to triple down on lying through their teeth about everything. The only question, really, the only mystery facing the population is whether or not the client media retains enough power to let them, or whether Keir Starmer will, through a combination of attributes and circumstance, luck if you like, and judgment, whether he'll be able to rise above the ludicrous fray in which 80% of the media has been complicit in the complete corruption of the country, visited upon it by first Brexit, then Boris Johnson, then Liz Truss, and then Rishi Sunak, with a little sort of hiatus, I suppose you could call it, under Theresa May, who just sought, if not to slam the brakes on and put the country into reverse as it careered towards a cliff edge, then at least to slow things down a bit, or to get some mattresses in place at the bottom of the cliff before we careered off it. And do you know, speaking of Theresa May, which I don't do often, Speaking of Theresa May, yesterday's little speech outside Downing Street was up there, wasn't it? It was up there with the one where she couldn't stop coughing, and then the letters started falling off the wall behind her while she was delivering her conference speech. I mean, for a Prime Minister not to have apparently accepted the wisdom of umbrellas, having got nearly, is he in his mid-40s? Umbrella, I suppose normally he's got someone to carry it for him, has he? Why couldn't he do that yesterday? Bad optics? No, you can't. You hold it yourself. I can't speak and hold an umbrella at the same time. Hey, who do you think I am? Tommy Cooper? This is absolutely impossible. Well, can't someone else hold an umbrella? No, because then people will say that he's your butler. I said, but he's not my butler. My butler's been hiding since I became Prime Minister. He's up in Richmond, making sure the swimming pool is properly chlorinated. So why is there no umbrella? How could they be doing so badly? How could it be such a mess? I actually know the answer to that question. The answer to that question is what could be best described as the James Cleverly principle. And the James Cleverly principle is a neat way of describing the abject shallowness of the talent puddle from which Rishi Sunak has been required to make key appointments. But those are the public appointments. If you think, the Liz Truss principle would perhaps be even more effective. If you look at the talent puddle from which Liz Truss made key appointments, you'd remember that, oh Lord, sometimes you remember things and it makes it actually makes your tummy flip over in terror at what's been done to a country you love. But Liz Truss made Therese Coffey Deputy Prime Minister and Jacob Rees-Mogg Secretary of State for Business. That's the calibre of candidate that the Conservative Party can draw on post-Brexit and Boris Johnson. But the James Cleverly principle means that somebody as inappropriately named as James Cleverly can rise all the way to the Home Office and indeed the Foreign Office. He can do both jobs in the space of a year. And if that's what's happening in public, if you've got to bring pie-face Cameron back from richly deserved political oblivion, rarely has a politician deserved oblivion more than Davy Cameron. If you've got to bring Davy Cameron back from political oblivion to be your Foreign Office Secretary, it's fairly clear that the pool of talent from which you would ordinarily be drawing your cabinet appointments is shallow to vanishing point. So if that's what's happening in public, imagine what's happening in private. Imagine the kind of candidate who looked at Rishi Sunak's premiership 6 months ago, 12 months ago, 18 months ago, and thought to himself or herself, do you know what? That is a bandwagon to which I really want to hitch myself. That, lads, that is the play. What's that? Yes, I do want to work for Team Rishi. Yes, I do want to be part of this exciting political project. Yes, I do want to be in the room where it happens when Rishi Sunak becomes Prime Minister. And that speaks to a calibre of candidate that would probably make James Cleverly look like Abraham Lincoln. What kind of person is currently sitting in Downing Street, quotes, masterminding, end quotes, the election campaign? So that is how, A, the optics yesterday could be so unbelievably awful, and B, a Prime Minister can end up delivering a speech which is both drowned out by the sounds of Dee Ream's seminal "Things Can Only Get Better" and almost drowned literally by the pouring rain in which he tried to deliver the speech. You would need a heart of stone, wouldn't you, not to feel sorry for Rishi Sunak as he gave a sort of plaintive, puppy-eyed glance towards the cameras and then turned around to display his sopping wet back as he walked his way back to Downing Street. And guess what? Turns out I've got a heart of stone because I didn't feel sorry for him at all. The combination of hubris, arrogance and catharsis that Rishi Sunak represents is it's almost performance art in its ridiculousness. 12 minutes after 10 is the time. So there are questions I can answer, and there are questions I can't answer. But there are no definitive answers to the first question of the day today. So there will be no rounds of applause. I can't quite imagine who would constitute a Ray Liotta at this point in proceedings, but why now? Why has he gone now? Why do you think he's gone now? 0345 6060 973. I will be probably nudging the question after 11 o'clock today towards how could anybody vote Tory after the 14 years we've just endured. But that that's not a question about or a presumption that everyone's going to vote Labour. But I am looking for answers to the question of why you think he's gone now, because none of them are good news for the Tories. The most remarkable thing I saw yesterday was reports that they were submitting letters of no confidence. We'll talk to Natasha about this a little later. But the idea that they might have one last round of rancorous infighting, one last volley of circular firing squad. Can you look me in the eye and tell me that they are not mad enough to do that? This lot are mad enough to do anything. It would be comedy were it not for the tragedy that they have been in charge of our country for 14 years. A party that could put Nadine Dorries in charge of media and culture, in charge of the arts. Just an extraordinary cavalcade of incompetence and corruption that perhaps will culminate on July the 4th of this year. But don't take anything for granted, because remember that the power wielded by the billionaire-owning, Tory-donating client media is absolutely immense. Daily Mail, Rishi seizes the initiative. He seizes the initiative? He couldn't even keep himself dry. What did he? He couldn't even seize an umbrella. But he seizes the initiative. In the pages of the Daily Mail, you have Michael Gove's ex-wife comparing him to Macbeth and meaning it as a compliment. I'm so desperate now are these people to pretend that things aren't awful and that their role in the awfulness is not destined for the history books, that you even have the Daily Telegraph essentially trying to make a joke out of things can only get wetter. And the Sun, I think, quite interestingly, is expressing unhappiness that we're having an election at all, because apparently they were all looking forward to the Taylor Swift tour and Wimbledon. So why now? Why now? I've steered clear of some of the obvious answers to that question because I want you to bring both the obvious and the unobvious solutions to this first mystery of the day. Why do you think Rishi Sunak has gone now, when all political wisdom, everybody actually, I think, said they'll leave it as long as possible on the Macauberish principle that something will come up? So the most obvious answer to the question of why he has done this now, 0345 6060 973, is that Rishi Sunak has had a proper crack at reading the runes. He's had a proper go at working out what lies ahead. And he's decided that this is as good as it gets, up to and including the humiliation of spending 2 years talking about little else but small boats and your ability to stop them by deporting perfectly peaceable, genuine asylum seekers to a country that recently shot dead asylum seekers or refugees who had the audacity to protest about their paltry food rations, changing the law to call that unsafe country safe, promising that you were the man to see planes take off, putting in the Home Office a woman who apparently dreams at night of Daily Telegraph front pages featuring planes full of refugees flying to Rwanda, and then having to go to the country before any of it has happened. It's as if he bet the house on deporting refugees and called an election before he could lose it. It's absolutely extraordinary. Shall we open up the phone line? Shall I spare you a longer than usual? Some people thought today's monologue might take you up to past. But it doesn't. It's not like the previous moments in recent British politics. This is the most normal one we've had, oddly. 2019 was an election fought upon version 2.0 of the Brexit lie. So 2019 was, we'll get Brexit done. Isn't it odd how no Tory in the country is going to campaign this year on the fact that they got Brexit done and it's all going brilliantly? Mad to think that in the space of 4.5 years you can go from promising to get something done, claiming that you've got it done, and then hoping that everybody has forgotten about it by the time they go back to the ballot boxes 4.5 years later. 2017 was possibly the most freakish election of all because Jeremy Corbyn secured more votes than anybody expected because huge swathes of the country, terrified by the prospect of becoming the first population in history to impose economic sanctions on itself, thought that he offered the last opportunity to find some sort of escape route from the mad Brexit that Boris Johnson and the rest of them were determined upon. So 2017 was crazy. 2015 was semi-normal because David Cameron went into it expecting to lose and at best to come back with a coalition, with a second coalition government, which meant that he would never have to keep the promise to deliver the referendum that would turn the country into the first population in history to vote to impose economic sanctions on itself. So in a way, this is the most normal election that we've had in almost a decade. Why, though, has he called it now?